This is the most unbelievable part of the Pokemon Teraleak. And yes, that includes the Typhlosion lore, because Pokemon Legends ZA only had a budget of $13 million. And Pokemon Legends ZA was pretty much finished in 2023. Never mind, that is the most unbelievable part of the Teraleak. What is going on? We have so much insanity to break down with this one. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to leave a like, share it with your friends, comment your thoughts down below. This is outrageous, it's wild, it's incredible to me. Also, Generation 10, just a budget of 20 million, and there's a lot of commentary, but also a lot of idiocy where people are like, yeah, and AAA is 500 million and overpriced, but it seems like Game Freak isn't spending a lot. You know, Breath of the Wild, wait, yeah, and then it's also hard to know exactly like the cost of every games, like we have estimations and stuff, so this is just coming from the ultimate everything ever about the history of the entirety of Game Freak got leaked. And it's like, you know what? When you look at everything, yeah, it's a $13 million game. Should Game Freak be spending more? Probably. Are they actually getting a lot out of the $13 million? Actually. But here's the thing, like, Game Freak knows their sales. Flashbang warning. Because no matter what, a main series Pokemon game is selling at least 10 million copies. And this is also after Pokemon Sword and Shield became one of the highest grossing Pokemon games ever, and then was beaten by Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and that also had DLC. So they just had like so much, they make so much profit off of these games. It's insane. My thought was like, oh yeah, because they're making like $1 billion per game now, they could probably throw like 50 million, 100 million budget is actually really safe for Game Freak, especially when we look at other Pokemon titles, because even on the 3DS, yeah, they were cheaper. Like, they sold for less, but they were also a lot cheaper to develop. Like, what was the budget of X and Y? Was it like 5 mil? And then the game made 500 mil? Oh, well over that, actually. But it's like, it's insane to think about. And then this is over a decade ago now. We are like so long removed of like low-selling games. And it's always been crazy because people will look at other AAA titles and be like, Baldur's Gate, 10 million, one of the highest selling games ever. It's like, bro, that's a failure for Pokemon if a game sells 10 million. And now we have all these other crazy Nintendo titles doing insane numbers. But even like looking at another thing, like how much do you think they cobbled together Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire for? Again, to make an insane amount of money. And even Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, like, They had all the assets. They just brightened it up a little bit with some saturation. They gave it to all the rookie developers, because that's one of my favorite things from an interview, where they were just like, yeah, we have 2 teams. We're training a team on the remake games with Ultra Sun and Ultra... Or not the remakes, but the, whatever they're called, for Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. It's like, oh, wow, that's actually a pretty good pipeline. And then they still make hundreds of millions of dollars for just cheapo budget games. And then even with, like, Pokemon Legends Arceus, I would consider it a failure when you look at like the rest of how Pokemon did, with it being the lowest selling Nintendo Switch game. And I'd also just say like the worst selling even 3D game, because like comparatively, when you have half the amount of consoles with the 3DS compared to Nintendo Switch, and you just have less people playing games in 2017 compared to 2021, especially in the COVID era, and you only get 14 million sales on Pokemon Legends Arceus, like that's a kind of failure. But that game still made over $750 million dollars. So the budget, like, how low was the budget for Pokemon Legends Arceus as well? So after that, even if they're expecting like a complete flop of ZA, they just don't care. Like, that actually kind of shows like why Pokemon Legends is so bad for Pokemon. Game Freak doesn't have to care. They could just fart out anything and make hundreds of millions in profit because the games cost nothing to develop. And then people are like, oh, but you know, Japanese salaries are cheaper. That doesn't matter. Even with like inflated salaries compared to other developers and stuff, Breath of the Wild's still taking 100 million, so that was the thing. And even with Western developers or out of like California and Seattle that are super expensive, there's no way you justify $400 million for a game that's going to sell and pretty much break even compared to what Nintendo is doing. So on that side of the discussion, it doesn't make any sense. But like, it's also weird because it both contradicts and supports the Game Freak is greedy thing. Because if Game Freak was greedy, and they have so many projects getting juggled, which is like another outrageous part of all this, when we have like multiple timeline breakdowns of the games, like so many games are happening, that's like, yeah, we know that they split it up, but now they have like it seems like they're overwhelmed with all their projects that Game Freak is working on. But if that's the case, why didn't Pokemon Legends ZA come out in 2023? Why, like, if the game was pretty much done, because that's trailer material from July of 2023. They could have actually made a trailer of almost the finalized game to show us for the Pokemon Presents in 2024, and they just didn't. Like, there's no reason to delay this game. They crap it out, even if it's, like, rushed into summer 2024, or some weird thing where, like, oh, they stack it, kind of like how they did with Pokemon Legends Arceus, where this game just comes out January 2024, and because it's stepping on the feet. Wait, actually no, it wouldn't even step on the feet, because that was the DLC for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. It would have actually been perfect to just release this in January, or make it a March game, or just retcon and say, yeah, Legends is spin-off games, so we'll release it in March, like we do for Pokemon Snap, which I think came out in April. So like that summer spin-off game, Game Freak could have had it, and even if it sells 5 million, even if it's like a complete failure because it's not a good game because they rushed it out, it's still profiting hundreds of millions of dollars. So if Game Freak was greedy, they would put out a game every 6 months with a $10 million budget, instead of delaying Pokemon Legends ZA for no reason and then ruining their entire timeline, which is kind of what I was talking about in my first video in this crazy saga of the Teraleak. Because, oh, now we have Generation 10 being a year behind, DLC in 2027, but then Legends Galar, so now they're also continuing Legends, they're stacking it. So like, now only 2 years between Legends. So if you thought, oh, they can't do they can't do 2021 for Arceus and then 2024 for ZA, that's too close together. No, now they're just actually spamming it with the other games. Then we have Multi-Region, which they're considering a remake, which is also weird, and that's the MMO game in 2028, and then 2030. Like, they could just spam it. It doesn't matter. Also, with all my other coverage, I missed that Pokopia is getting DLC. I forgot Pokopia exists. That's one of the most excited games I am. That's one of the most excited I am for any game, let alone a Pokemon game. And then Pokemon Champions was originally planned to release this year, which is another complaint I have. Like, you look at Pokemon Champions, and the modding community of Pokemon, like the ROM hackers and the people that make extreme randomizers and stuff with Pokemon assets, they could have probably put together the entirety of Pokemon Champions by just, like, mixing it with Showdown and then talking with, like, all the competitive Showdown developers and stuff. They could have made that, like, entire game in 2 months. And it's probably going to be better than anything Game Freak puts out because they don't add enough depth and complexity and customization to the battle system. So the game should have already been done and released even, like, from the announcement. So whatever weird delay happened with Pokemon ZA has actually just killed Game Freak. And it's not even, like, a greed play, because the game was done and cost nothing to make. And now Pokemon just sucks until maybe 2028. If it's still alive by then, and, like, Palworld doesn't have an MMO, or Animo hasn't, like, completely taken over, or whatever new project just kind of crops up and steals the spotlight. Because Palworld not coming out of nowhere, but its success after just watching it bubble up. Like, we have many years now to just kind of watch how this goes. And then we don't know what's happening with Champions. Like, Champions need to happen this summer. It needed to be summer 2025, or else it's just dead. And now, if Pokemon Legends ZA doesn't go well, no one's picking up Pokemon again for Champions. And this looks like a horrible game that's just getting completely roasted and memed on because everyone's already played it early on their PC emulators and stuff. So that's also going to tank the sales by millions. Game's still profiting hundreds of millions, no matter how terribly it sells based off of all this. But, like, whatever politics is going on inside of Game Freak, why they're just unnecessarily delaying games, even though, like, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet lasts, like, 3 weeks. Every new generation, every new main series game has the shortest lifespan ever. No one played Pokemon Legends Arceus past 2 weeks, and no one ever revisited it because it's a trash game that everyone lies about. So, like, yeah, we actually need a new Pokemon game every 6 months to just blitz for a month. maybe hang on a little bit and then just wait for the next one. And that actually is fine for the ecosystem. And again, it's so cheap. Game Freak actually just makes more and more money. So Game Freak is like allergic to money, and it's actually killed Pokemon, and now their plans just don't make any sense. It also gets weirder. So I thought, like, my highest, most insane estimations would have been that 10% of people buy the DLC of Pokemon games, like Pokemon Sword and Shield, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. 25%. Who are you people? Where did this come from? At 25, that's an insane amount. I'm guessing like mostly Japan, but also there's a lot of people like, no one played the DLC. No one has Kid Akami. No one came back for the Blueberry Academy. Game's dead. 6 million. More than like a AAA success. Where people are like arguing over Dragon Age, whatever, Veilguard. It's like, well, it got 5 million, so it's fine. Kind of thing. It's like, dude, that's just DLC of the Pokemon game. 25%. And then the insulting thing, it was over budget. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet DLC ended up going way over budget, costing as much as the entire Legends Arceus development. But it made like half as much. And that's still insane amounts of profit, because like the game made 200 million-ish, like a little less than that, on just DLC for whatever. And the original budget, I don't know if this was even the finalized, like development budget, actually no, if you go over budget, then that's because you set your budget and then you went over. So it's like, oh, Scarlet and Violet DLC, 500 million yen, a quarter of Pokemon Legends ZA. It's like actually, let's get the conversion so I can see the number. 3.2 million. The budget was 3 million and it's making almost 200 million. Why are they upset about that? How can they be upset about that? And even if it like doubled, that means the budget of Legends Arceus was like $6 million. And that garbage made a 750 million. I want to say million, but like, no, it made 750 million. And then whatever, like, marketing costs, even though, like, another thing that people are saying, it's like, oh, well, these aren't, like, the numbers because, you know, most of it's going to be marketing, like how they do with movies. Feels like the Pokemon Company, especially Pokemon Company International, like, cut back on marketing the games a lot. Back in, like, the 3DS era and even Pokemon Let's Go, it seemed like they were hammering ads. I was even getting comments regularly, people like saying like, lol, I got a Pokemon Let's Go ad about the trailer of the video you're making, kind of thing. And now I don't see those comments anymore. So like, also comment down below, have you seen as many Pokemon game ads? Because like probably TCG and mobile, like I'm not counting mobile with them, like Pokemon main series trailers. Have you gotten as many recently as in the past? Because I feel it really feels like, also the views, where I think the ad buy, I'm pretty sure Pokemon Let's Go got all those views because of an ad buy. Because kind of out of nowhere, like now, Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Pokemon Let's Go Eevee trailer did not get 21 million when like you look at the sales being less than Pokemon Sun and Moon, and this had 11 million. Now, like this almost, like these felt organic, especially when like random Alolan forms, like maybe they bought 1 million views on this. But like the Pokemon community was rabid, it was hype. 2016 was the fucking time, man. And then this was also super duper hype and everyone loved it, and that was just the best time for Pokemon news ever. And that's why I mean it felt organic. Where, what do you mean 5 million views for the Raticate reveal or something? Man, Pokemon has so many high view videos. This, like, okay, Z moves, Rattata, and a Munchlax event, 5 million. Goated. Everything else, like the Raticate, Totem, and all this, like, the amount of views, the amount of hype was insane. Pokemon has completely dropped the ball in failing to capture that. Doesn't seem like it matters because the games have absolutely no budget. Maybe that's why Game Freak, again, they're just like, yeah, we're selling 20 million no matter what, 10 million for Legends. Games cost pennies to make. Who cares if everyone hates it or doesn't have any hype? It's just over. So I mean, like, yeah, the Let's Go ad buy was massive. And it feels like they haven't done that since. And then Legends Arceus was still $6 million to make. Absolutely unreal. So, like, the DLC is still costing that. Going over budget. Going forward, we will keep DLC at an appropriate scale with the revenue. What do you mean with the revenue? And focus on achieving... Why... Like, those numbers are so small, where it's like, yo, why make it cost $1 million less? Like, just make it cost $1 million more. Make it go from 3 million budget to 6 million budget, instead of trying to cut it down to 4 million. Because, like, yeah, that's actually crazy, where it's like they cut the budget by a third. I'd rather have more content, because that $2 million is a rounding error with the sales of these games and apparently a DLC. I'd be okay with that. It's like, oh, you went over budget because only 8% of people have DLC. Oopsie. Yeah, just make lower quality DLC because no one cares about it. But like, brother, I am in disbelief of the entire situation of everything going on. And that's like, oh yeah, $13 million because this. I wanted to comment on something, perhaps for the reason the flat buildings in the game. The entire Lumio City is one model. We have the entire city loaded onto the console when we play. It's like Switch 1 shenanigans, Game Freak's development weirdness. Like, it's a fault of gameplay, or Game Freak, but it's also a fault of the Nintendo Switch. Like, the PS whatever can run this no problem. The Xbox whatever could handle this. And if you're, like, you know, they develop it on a computer, and then they're emulating on a computer, and they can make it look a lot better, and make it run a lot better. So, like, I guess it makes sense. And maybe this worked better after Scarlet and Violet had issues, but then they have to just limit the scope of the game. But like, okay, we don't go to Kalos, we don't have the entire region, and then they make this, so now they can't put any detail, and it's all just like flat mapping. So, but that's budget. We can see the budget save here, which is why I hate the Legend series, because it's actually just crap. It's crap that doesn't care about Pokemon telling an actual story, giving an actual good experience. And like, yeah, again, maybe this makes sense, but it also means like you're losing on fidelity. Or they didn't go back. They also didn't go back. You can't though, because I wonder how many thousands of windows are here. You can't make like a bar that adds another several hundred polygons for thousands of bars. Just the bars on the windows in that extrusion would double the actual like size of the city. So I guess like this like it is weird when they say like it's loaded into the console when we play, but it's also how open world works. That the entire open world is loaded the entire time. So this is probably actually best. This is because of the Nintendo Switch being underpowered, and probably the best way. This actually might prove Game Freak has some competence for optimization, but it means your game is going to look like crap because it's forced to on Nintendo Switch. And because it was developed for the Nintendo Switch and finished in 2023, and just held on to for no reason, the Nintendo Switch 2 version doesn't get a different city model. It doesn't get to have more detail. It just gets to be like prettier and run better and maybe like get some kind of benefit, but like Nintendo Switch holding Game Freak back, Nintendo Switch 2 isn't, and then we're going to get a procedural generation or procedurally generated islands for Gen 10. So like it actually looks cool. We get to have an infinitely sized Pokemon game because the Nintendo Switch 2 is just that much better than the Nintendo Switch 1. But like, wow, this is the quality of Game Freak. Like the Zoomers just can't make games, I guess. Like there's so many people that want to work for Game Freak. There's so much development talent out there that's getting overlooked. And then whatever hiring is happening, whatever favoritism, whatever like, oh, you went to this place and they reached DEI goals, so that's why we need to hire you kind of thing. It's like any fan games have this kind of quality inside of them. Modders put more work into building the entire thing. Even if you look at it, you can see like an entire face of a building is just two triangles. So like you can't put anything onto that. There's not going to be any texture. There's not going to be any life behind it. I'm going to blame Nintendo Switch 1 more, and that's why I'm also just like, I don't care about whatever uninformed takes other people have, or they're just trying to hate on Game Freak, but man, it all comes together and makes sense. Not everything being the fault of the Pokemon Company. Someone at Game Freak must truly be an idiot. Why though? Like, how is this an idiotic play? I think this is actually the smart budget play to make your game run on the Nintendo Switch. It's just going to look like crap, but because you're forced to develop on the Nintendo Switch. Previous game, yeah, but also, and then this lie. Like, previous game, they didn't know how to load models close to the character without creating inconsistencies in the shadows. So they just had, like, multiple copies in all the areas, and that took up game size. But then actual developers were coming in saying, like, no, this is common practice. So, a lot of misinformation, a lot of blind hate. But man, that's a bad look. That's a really bad look. And it's even worse when the budget comes out. And it's even worse when your game was done in July. Oh, well, not done, but, like, dude, like, that's it on the files. Like, 2023-07. And it was almost finished. Could have had it by summer 2024. We could have gotten back on track, boys. Instead, we are 2 years behind on Game Freak and nothing makes sense. Outrageous. Man, what happened? Hope you guys enjoy the video. I'll see you guys for the next one. Playlist, like, comment, subscribe. We're just all in.